So we are continuing our sermon series on the Sermon on the Mount. We are looking at the Beatitudes, which covers Matthew 5, 3 through 13. And we've been digging into this for this is our fifth week, actually. We're looking at this. Look at us. Look at how well we're doing. We're doing great. So this is our fifth week going through these. And so tonight we're looking at just the next Beatitude in the line. It's actually only our third Beatitude. We had 2 weeks for introduction. So if this is like your first time here, don't worry about it. You've only missed 2 previous Beatitudes. And next week, I'm doing a recap. So look at that. I'm going to build in breaks, last time on Beatitudes. So it's like an episode of Dragon Ball Z where nothing happens for a whole 20 minutes until the last 5 minutes something happens. You know what I'm talking about. The OGs know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so tonight we're looking at Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Straightforward, pretty simple. Inherit the earth, kind of makes sense. Commentaries I dug into, spent a lot of time trying to analyze that, and that almost all came down to I inherit a place, a space, and that was as far as I can go. Does it mean inherit the whole world? Does it mean inherit the promised land per se? Because some translations render this as land and so on and so forth. But pretty quickly, all came to a consensus. It's going to be you're inheriting a space in which you'll be free from any opposition, any problems, so on and so forth. So we would talk about, okay, that's heaven more or less, right? Now, the real problem, the real question for most readers in this passage is, what does the word meek mean? It's not a word we use a lot these days. It's not a word that is tossed around a lot in the old vocabulary list in grade school. But I thought we'd spend some time tonight unpacking that word and looking at how Jesus is using this word on purpose and using this whole beatitude. He's phrasing it this way for a very specific purpose. So we'll start with defining the word meek. One commentary put it as the meek are people who do not seek gain for themselves. Instead, they hope in the Lord. Craig Blomberg defined it this way. He said that a meek person is not the wallflower you have to think of. They're not a weak person, but instead somebody who's humble, who is gentle and not aggressive. And not because they can't, not because they are actually weak, but it's a choice. Somebody who chooses to lower themselves and to not strike back, to be non-aggressive, to be not passive, just not aggressive. And I really like how Scott McKnight put it. I really appreciating his commentary on this passage. He said, the meek are those who suffer and who have been humbled, and yet they do not seek revenge, but God's glory and the welfare of others. In other words, they lovingly trust God and hope in God's timing and God's justice. So the meek are a lot like the poor in spirit from 2 weeks ago. Their focus isn't on themselves, but on God. Their focus is on Him as defender and protector. Their focus is on Him as provider and justifier. They more or less are counting on God to fight their battles for Him. The meek person looks to God for justice. They don't take matters into their own hands, which is very hard for me. I am a worrier. I am a self-defender all the time. If someone says something to me, it can be very humble, just not humble, a very simple comment, a simple thing. I will immediately begin to defend myself or justify myself. Even if what they said wasn't really critical, I'm going to take it that way and try to immediately explain why what they said is wrong and I'm right, even if they didn't even try and tell me I'm wrong about something. That's a real flaw in my personality. And I shouldn't even gloss over the fact that I'm a worrier. I will worry about things that aren't even, I will worry about what problems could come up, okay, in order to distract myself from all the worries about problems I already have. This is what I do. I just obsess over things. I worry about just almost impossible problems. I'm going to have considered it. And you think, wow, you're probably prepared for everything. Nope, not at all. Terrible in a crisis. Terrible in a crisis, because worrying doesn't actually prepare you for anything. It just keeps you in a perpetual panic state, and I'm very good at panic states. And so for me tonight, I want to be very clear. When I discuss meekness, this is not like let me tell you how to be like me. Not at all. let me describe to you a problem I have and see if it applies to you as well. Okay? Now, I mentioned previously that Jesus in this whole sermon is oftentimes dropping in very clear Old Testament references. He's not making all this up on the spot. Sermon on the Mount is one of the greatest passages of Scripture, not because it's all brand new wisdom that the writers place in the mouth of Jesus, because Jesus is taking the Old Testament and he is laying it out in a brand new way, reinvigorating it and presenting it to the audience as now here are some things you knew or believed from before. Let me show you how it all fits together to create a new way of living unlike anything you've seen before. Like, all the pieces are familiar, but the design I'm creating for you now is brand new and it's incredible. And so it shouldn't shock us tonight to realize that Jesus' line here about the meek shall inherit the earth is actually borrowed from Psalm 37. A little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the earth and enjoy peace and prosperity. So clearly, Jesus is quoting from Psalm 37. Every commentary says the same thing, that this beatitude is an almost direct quote and would have been perceived that way by those people listening to Jesus. They would have heard this quote and thought, okay, he's quoting from Psalm 37. Pastor likes to call these hyperlinks to the Old Testament, right? It's kind of like when you with your friends, like if you went to high school the same era, or you were raised in the same city, and you make a quote for that one movie, and all your friends instantly know the reference because it's that one movie you all watched and made fun of in high school, right? So for a long time, like Napoleon Dynamite quotes worked that way because it's a terrible movie, great quotes. Nacho Libre is great for that purpose, right? Did you not tell them that they are the Lord's cheaps? Great, just class. And some, if you're over 55, that means nothing to you. I'm so sorry. That's probably a huge assault on your awareness of culture. It's not a good movie. I would not suggest you watch it. It was just funny in the moment. There's a movie my siblings and I loved from the late 90s, Mystery Men. And there's about 1,001 quotes from that movie. If I reference, it's not a good movie, but there's great quotes. And so do we go and save the day, or do I eat this sandwich? That's a great quote from that movie that makes no sense to you guys. But if I say it, my brother knows, that's the shoveler. And again, you won't know what that means at all. And so when Jesus makes this statement about the meek will inherit the earth, the audience there instantly knows, oh, that's the Psalm. That's Psalm 37. So for you guys, when I say Psalm 37, you're probably like, okay, yeah, it's probably in the Bible somewhere. Let me go ahead and unpack what that psalm means. It's actually a very long psalm, and I thought for your benefit, I won't read the whole thing tonight, but we're in verses 10 to 11 here. We're going to jump back and start the psalm over and read through until 10 to 11. So in verse 1, do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it only leads to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. And then again, when we go back real quick to verse 10, it says, a little while, wow, that was too many W's. A little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. Or the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. And so we see here this clear theme, of don't fret, calm down, trust in God, enjoy God, make him your delight, focus yourself on him, not on your situation, live in the land, but find the light of living in Jesus, or in God, not in your situation, okay? It's very clear that we are to trust in God to bring justice, to live in the land as peacefully as we can, taking delight in God, even when life isn't delightful, trusting in his promise to fulfill our desire that we will eventually inherit the land. But before we inherit the land, unfortunately, before God will make everything right, we will suffer without striking back. We will wait for God to bring about justice. We will not seek vengeance. As one commentator put it, in the Beatitudes, meekness is framed over and against wrath, anger, violence, acquisitiveness, rapaciousness, theft, violent takeovers, and brutal reclamations of property. The meek choose to absorb unjust conditions in a form of nonviolent, non-retaliatory resistance that creates a calm, countercultural community of love, justice, and peace. Jesus is talking to people who are living under the thumb of the Romans. In fact, before the Romans, it was, for Israel, before the Romans, you had Alexander the Great and his empire there. They have been mistreated, oppressed for generations. They've not known freedom for quite some time. And it is, if these words brush against us, it definitely brushed against them. Because there's so many in Israel at the time who were eager for revolution, who were eager for revolt, who were eager to get their lick back, which is a phrase I've heard numerous times in class when a kid smacks somebody back the head and then runs, and I'm like, hey, don't chase after him. Oh man, I gotta get my lick back. No, you don't. You really don't. You can just let it go. You know that he's a knucklehead, and I'm gonna find him and write him up, and you're gonna escape scot-free on this. That's what we're called to do. We're called to let it go and not get our lick back, and to absorb the unjust conditions, and it's just painful to say this, but to let things go wrong and not strike back. That's tough. That's not easy. It's not easy to resist the cultural impulse to fight and to claim and to grab. These words here, acquisitiveness, rapaciousness. Over the summer, I did an audiobook on the Roman Empire. It was called Caesar and Christ. It was a 30-hour audiobook, and 27 hours were on Rome, and the last 3 hours were on Christianity. And the book was very much like, yeah, Christianity wins. Rome collapses and becomes a Christian empire. Now, I'll put Christian empire because it's still Rome. They're crushed, and the Christians take over. And it's in part because they build a community like this. They build a community that's full of love and mutual assurance and protection. And like, we will fight for your justice. I'm not going to fight for myself, but I'll fight for you. And I'll protect you. You protect me. And it is. That's the word I'm looking for there. Doesn't matter. We're helping each other out. We're sharing each other. We're sharing our resources. We're benefiting from each other. We're not out there fighting for ourselves, which is, this first part here is the absolute definition of the Roman Empire. Always out for more, always eager to dominate, to grab, to steal. Like, there's no one at that time period outside of the elites of Rome saw Rome as noble, honorable. Like, that's how we have gone back and whitewashed all that. Everyone hated them. Because if they didn't have something, they just took it. And that's the exact opposite kind of nation that Christ is trying to build in this sermon. You will not take, instead, you will give. You will suffer the unjustness of your situation, and you will do so because you know that in the end, you will inherit more than you've lost. We are to absorb the injustice of our times, and we present it to God in prayer. We do not strike back. We do not retaliate. Instead, we expend what power and influence and status we do have to lift up those who might be even worse off than we are. That's our calling, is to say, you know what, I'm facing some injustice here, and I'm not going to make it about me. But I'm going to find people who are having it worse off than me, and I'm going to fight for their cause. And as we build a community that does that, all of a sudden, everyone's cause gets picked up. And it's not about me fighting for my cause, because when you fight for yourself, it looks a little bit, right? Okay? But when you fight for somebody else, people are like, oh, wow, that's an honorable thing to do. It's a kind thing to do to help somebody else out. And if we're helping each other, everyone eventually is going to get helped. It's not about, never getting things made right for you. It's about making sure everyone else is taken care of first, and eventually you'll be made whole as well. In a democracy, we have avenues to petition for justice. But violence is never one of those avenues. We're not allowed to strike out and to cause harm and to hurt other image bearers of God. Even whether they are redeemed or not, we're not to strike out in that way. That's what they do, and let them do it. We don't operate that way. This is where, as a parent, time and again, I have to remind my 14-year-old, the 6-year-old will do things that you cannot do. And no, that's not fair. Well, no, whoa. You've got all kinds of freedom she doesn't have. She's learning lessons you learned a long time ago, I assume. Okay? And so this is where you have to understand that you're in a position of maturity. You can't respond like she responds. Okay? You don't have that right to do that anymore. You can't plead ignorance. You know better. We know better. We've been very, very clearly made aware that we are not to strike back. We are to take the blow, but not return them. There's no room for fighting with violence. There's no room for that at all. And I know what you're probably asking, because I asked it myself too, what about righteous anger? And I was texting all the pastors this morning, like, how do I communicate this properly? And I'm not sure I have it figured out yet. But the phrase righteous anger gets tossed out in the church a lot. And oftentimes they point to Jesus in the temple. He comes in and sees the money changers and all these animals were sacrificed. And it's a big, noisy mess, and it's absolutely preventing the proper worship of God. And he picks up a whip and starts turning tables over and chasing folks out. And I'm sure it was quite a scene to see. Pastor Phil explained that away. I'm glad you asked. So, I firmly believe that Jesus is the only being capable of wielding righteous anger properly. It's a real thing. But Jesus is the only person who's truly righteous. Our righteousness comes from him. And our righteousness is not a temporary thing, but it is a thing that we don't always operate out of. Jesus is always righteous, always right before God, always selfless, always putting God's will before his own personal preferences. So if Jesus gets angry and picks up a whip, it's because God wanted him to do that. Now, I don't think I have the ego to claim that when I get angry, it's because God wants me to be angry. Okay, I get angry a lot. It's not a hard thing for me to do. And so I would be hard-pressed to say, no, God made me angry about this. And talking about this with pastors, one of the pastors throughout Nehemiah 5. This is a scene where Nehemiah gets upset. It says that he gets very angry in the text, and he calls a meeting and reprimands all the leaders of Jerusalem for an issue, okay? That, to me, seems like a pretty reasonable way to handle anger. I'm mad about something. I'm calling you all in. I'm letting you know why I'm angry. And why was he angry? Okay, he's angry because the people of Jerusalem, the poor people, are being oppressed and not cared for, which was the job of those leaders of Jerusalem. So Nehemiah is angry not for himself. He's got food. He's got money. He's fine. He's literally mad for everyone else. Why is Jesus angry in the temple? Because people are preventing the poor and the marginalized from worshiping God easily. The leaders have set up this money exchanging system where you have to change in Roman money, which is bad, for temple money. But the exchange rates are against you. So when you take some more Roman money to get a temple coin, so you're losing money to go worship. That's crooked. And Jesus is furious about that. Those are the things we should get angry about. Now, how we handle it, okay, we got to be careful because we can take our anger too far. We might get angry about an unjust situation for somebody else, and that's okay and that's right. But how you then use that anger can get you into trouble really quickly. I've been angry before. I had a good reason to be angry because something was being done wrong for somebody else, and I took the anger way too far. And when we take anger too far, we end up hurting ourselves, we hurt our witness, hurt those around us, and we probably make that thing we're mad about, we probably make it worse. And we prevent them from getting real assistance because we made everyone who could fix it mad at us and not mad at the problem. The whole point of being angry about an injustice is to get everyone else angry about it too, so they'll fix it, not angry at us. Jesus is the only one who can get angry and physically violent without a hint of self-interest, without a shade of sin, without the tiniest bit of joy in causing pain. And why was he angry? He's angry because people can't worship God in the environment that they were in. He wanted to make it easier for folks to find God. When we get angry about things, it should be because people are being kept away from what they need, food, water, shelter, being kept away from God, kept away from whatever. When we get angry, it should be for the benefit of somebody else, just like Jesus did. Okay? Next question you're probably asking, what about sticking up for myself? Right? What about that? I think it's also out the window in a lot of circumstances. And maybe there's a circumstance I've not considered where it's appropriate. I'm not saying you can't explain something. Somebody says, hey, I heard you stole $10 out of the till yesterday. No, I didn't. No, a $10 bill came in. I dropped it, picked it up, put it back. I was, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when someone brings something to us and we blow up, which, again, is what I often do. We blow up, begin to defend ourselves. And when we do that, it's often a mask for hurt pride. And perhaps even sometimes a cover up for a sense of guilt. Like you're caught, you're wrong. So instead of admitting you're wrong, you're gonna huff and puff and defend yourself in some way, trying to explain why you're not wrong, while actually you're wrong, and go on from there. Not you particularly, buddy. I'm sorry. We got in the way of a wild finger there. So, defending others, sacrificing our power, our wealth, our time, maybe even our lives, our physical well-being for them, that could be more Christ-like. Fighting for ourselves is a fool's errand, because in the end, the only person who can truly justify us is God. But fighting for others, putting ourselves in line for them, that's what Christ did. But let's be clear, in the end, the ends never justify the means. You can't do bad things for a good reason. It doesn't work out that way. In Matthew 16, Christ makes it very clear that meekness is our only path forward. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If we want to inherit the land as we're promised, it requires meekness. We can't shortchange that. We can't shortcut it. We can't fight our way into our inheritance. We have to surrender our will, surrender ourselves, and we inherit it that way. Nothing is gained by selling ourselves for power. The meek give their power away, knowing they'll inherit the land one day when God does it for them. Until then, we must conduct ourselves in the light of the gospel truth that everyone was made in God's image and that he is eager to redeem even the most unjust and cruel individuals. And when we do that, when we pursue that meekness by allowing Jesus to be his character to be birthed into our hearts and lives, by allowing the Holy Spirit to transform us and make us more like him, we become meek. As he himself said, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle, humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. He himself said, I am gentle. By the way, that word gentle there, same Greek word as in the Beatitudes for meek. Same exact word. He's saying, I'm meek. I don't seek myself. I don't seek for myself. I don't seek for my betterment. I seek for you. I seek to lift you up. You do the same thing. You become like me. Seek the betterment of others. Paul, the apostle, puts it in Philippians 2 in a similar fashion. It's a long passage. I will not read the entire thing. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, any common sharing in the Spirit, any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ. And he goes on to discuss the incarnation, saying that Christ emptied himself of his divinity and became a man like us, humbling himself, pursuing the meek path to lift up others and not himself, even to the point of going to the cross. And we see that same theme in Isaiah 53, talking about Christ being led as a lamb to the slaughter, not crying out, not defending himself, not fighting it, but welcoming it because he knows what it will do for us. And that's what we're called to do. Called to live lives of sacrifice. And as we do that, as we pursue that meek path, the path of Jesus, we know that in the end we will be blessed and we will inherit the land. It's sad to say, guys, that there'll be pain in this process in this life. We will be called upon to suffer for others, for Jesus. But we know that in the end, the blessing does come. Blessing comes after the pain. It doesn't come now, but it will come. No matter how low you feel right now, no matter how far down this world pushes you, it doesn't compare to how high God will lift us up in the end when we do inherit the land with him. I'm going to ask you guys to take some time on your tables to reflect on this. I've put back up one of the quotes I read tonight. And I want to ask you this question. Are we meek like Jesus, or are we violent like the wicked? And I don't necessarily mean like physically violent in every case, but do we fight for ourselves when instead we should surrender and let God fight for us instead? Take some time. Please reflect on that right now at your tables, and then take some time for prayer requests, and I'll come back in a little bit to pray and dismiss us. Thanks for being here tonight, guys.